Arimai, and welcome to the ordinary meeting of council this morning. Welcome to any viewers who are watching the live streaming online this morning. Apologies. I don't believe we have any apologies this morning. Do we have any declarations of interest? Public forum, public forums, petitions, deputations. I'm not aware of any this morning. Supplementary is further, that's okay. We'll move to item 5, which is the confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting of council for the 1st of September.
I'll move, Jim.
Moved by Neville.
Seconded.
Seconded by Eric. Moved and seconded. Are there any items for discussion or change? Aware of any? Judging by the silence, I will put the motion. All in favour that the accepted will say aye.
Aye.
Right, we'll move to item 6, which is the adoption of committee resolutions. Southport Subcommittee meeting of the 27th of August. David, would you like to comment on
yes, I can do that, Mr. Chairman. Really, it was a very short meeting. Southport, we're still waiting for their audit, their annual report, and to go out to the general public. We adjourned it, had a short meeting and adjourned it until the following day. So,
it was paused, so you can report on the
full meeting.
Following day.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, we met on the Friday. We had a full discussion about a report from the chairman and CEO for Southport, and they had an excellent result, considering considering the fact that we were in COVID for part of it, but as a year's result, it was excellent. Impressed with just the working ethic, I suppose, at Southport. Because the staff down there, it seems to work extremely well. It's obviously a very good management. So, and then we received a letter from the chairman regards remuneration for the director's remuneration, which we dealt with in public exclusion later in the meeting. But no, just very impressed with. Then there was discussion on just where things were going with certain things as regard to the digging of the channel, the new tug, some of those things that investment for the future. Very good meeting.
Thank you, David. Second for the Jeremy. Any questions for David?
I just wondering, is it a Zoom meeting, David?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I just wondered if that should be. I didn't sort of see it noted there. I wonder if we should actually note whether it's a Zoom one, because it may have a. Not that it really matters, but it can sort of alter the dynamics of it.
It does actually say in the top,
Right.
held by Zoom
Sorry.
Digital.
No further questions. I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Right, move to item 7, which is the notification of extraordinary urgent business supplementary reports or other. We do have one supplementary this morning, which has been circulated, and we with that at the end.
But you need a resolution.
Oh yes, but I need a resolution. That
I'll move. I'll second it.
Moved by Lloyd, seconded by Jeremy. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Item 8, questions. I haven't been made aware of any questions this morning. So I'll move to item 9, which is the staff report, and item 1 is the rate set and levies 2021 to 2022. Chris, I think you're dealing with this morning. Do you want to make any comments?
Could I
Thank you,
just,
Chair.
could I just start, Chris, just some initial comments from me, just this is a pretty important process, but it does follow on from the council's adoption of the long-term plan. But also pretty important for us as an organisation going forward to have a revenue stream. So I'll hand over to Chris to talk about some of the detail.
Thank you, Rob. There should be no surprises in terms of the total numbers of the rates and the schedules in front of you. Net of GST represents 22.86 million revenue, which is consistent with our funding impact statement, which is contained in the long-term plan. So there should be no surprises. There's just one note I wish to make about the composition of the rates totals. When the long-term plan was set, it was based, and the rates were agreed, were set on a rating database existent at the time. Since then, the rating database has changed. In particular, there's been a significant increase in the number of properties within the database. What that has meant that the total of the uniform annual general charge is higher than was contained in that fiscal income statement. To offset that, the general rates multiplier has been adjusted downwards so that the total remains the same as it was as agreed in the long-term plan. Is there any point you wish to make, Chair? If there are any questions?
Any questions, Lloyd?
Thanks, Jim. Just clarification, you've got in the recommendation the list of penalties and the arrears, etc. Do we need to put in here, or is it accompanied outside that because this talks about a one-off payment on the 26th of November by memory, but we actually have a deferred payment system of 3 installments or by arrangement to the council. Does that need to be in here, or is that covered in another policy?
I don't know the answer to that, Councillor.
The reason I say that is because there's no counterfactual to the one-off payment here. And I was wondering whether we needed either a reference to, or we need the ability for their ratepayers to actually meet the requirements of this resolution. You see, as a councillor, this is actually a pretty big thing for me. I never thought I would be supporting this sort of increase to a community, which puts responsibility greater on us as an organisation and to our staff to be timely, to be efficient, and to be a greater level of service because of this expectation. Now, we can argue where it comes from, it doesn't matter. So I just want to make sure with those things in the back of my mind that we've actually made sure that we have accommodated what we want in this resolution to our community.
Look, we've got Tanya online. I think she's probably best placed to answer.
I think she is.
Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor McCullum, it's covered in our rates and remissions policy. It's the same, what you see in front of you is the same rates resolution from last year. The 3 payment plan we have in place again, and we're offering it, of course, to all people. And as a default, once they enter into that 3 payment plan, they will not be charged the penalties or arrears.
Does that answer the question?
Well, I just wonder whether there should be a reference in this resolution to that policy, but I'm happy to go with the feeling. I just want to make sure we've got that tidied up.
And it seemed to work quite well last year.
And that's why I wanted to raise it, because it did work very well.
David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, at the risk of being accused of grandstanding, I've got to be a wee bit careful, but I mean, I've got absolutely no problem with the procedural matters within this recommendation, but I still have a problem with the 20% base increase. So I'll probably vote against the recommendation, but I won't take it any further than that. I mean, as far as the procedural matters go, no problem at all.
Lloyd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had a lot of sort of negative feedback as well on the 20%, which is sort of more than we've done before. But having gone through the whole process to reach that, I'm going to vote in favour of it. But in the expectation that next year is 5% and the year after, I believe, as well. So I'll be voting for it, but a little reluctantly.
Look, I think we've had a very long process we went through. I don't think anybody wanted to have a figure that's come out the other end. But in order to do our job and to activate and to be able to advocate for issues that are important to our province, we needed the funding. It was well debated. I know the final result didn't actually suit everybody. The decision has been made, and a lot of the publicity doesn't actually look at the Otagos, the West Coast, the Canterburys. They have all had significant rises. Otago was considerably more than ours. Percentages don't mean a lot, but I think we can take some comfort that it wasn't that we didn't do our job. We actually, if we took out the cruise shipping loss of funding, and it's looking even further away at the moment, we would have been under 10%. And I think the public need to know that we actually went through the figures with a fine tooth comb. The figure's ugly, but to me, it was a leadership decision. You've got a situation with Three Waters where councils over the years in that area have not made the hard decisions. And I think we had the courage to make the right decision. And I stand by it. I know we'll get flack, but it was a decision I felt had to be made. Any further comments? Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So this one, again, we might get some help from the screen. Scheme 435 Lake Hawkins, Invercargill Airport contribution 10,625. So how is that number assessed, and obviously in relation to the fact that we're going to have a fairly expensive renewal to the pumping station that drains or keeps the airport dry. So how is that figure calculated?
You're muted, Tanya. You're on. Okay.
Chair, it's an agreed formula with the Invercargill Airport. There is, in saying that, there is obviously room to negotiate, and I would expect that council will be talking to ICC as we go along and the project total costs become known. That's an historical agreement, and I'm sorry I don't have any more information, but for this year, that is the rate.
So has it increased by the 20% or approximately, or has that number been retained?
Actually, sorry, Councillor, I can't answer that question without looking back at it. It comes to me from the catchment area.
Jeremy, then Lloyd.
Just a clarification. It'd be good to see the UAGC. I just want to know how many more. Is there a reason for why there's so many more
properties?
Yeah, properties.
I think there's about 600 additional properties. Tony can probably clarify that for me. 600 additional properties, which just led to the straight increase in the UAGC. I don't know where those properties are located.
So would that be a decrease in theory per rating unit? We've still got the totals in it, so we've got the total, but it would actually be a decrease. So the UAGC wouldn't have gone up 20% then. Is that right?
I think it would have, but
If you're spreading over more rating and particularly per unit. It'd be good just to see that in paper. Oh, Tanya, yep, sorry.
No, I'm just signaling I'm happy to answer the question, Councillor. We maintain the UAGC at the rate agreed with the councillors through the workshops. It is based on a formula of last year's UAGC plus the total average increase. And so we maintained it at the $127.80, but there were 600 properties come into the database in the last 3 months, which significantly put up the total potential rates. And it was our recommendation to exec that we reduce the levies per dollar on the capital value to keep the total rates the same. And the 600 properties have come in through the creation of new properties over the last part of the financial year, or mainly in the Southern District, but not totally. 2/3 South and 1/3 ICC.
Just one wee quick one. I'll obviously voted against the other issues with the long-term plan, but I'm happy that this is a formality that we've just got to tick the box and send the bills out, but always challenge some of the issues that we're going to have in the future. Sending the rates bill won't be enough to pay for them out in the community, and looking at debt and issues like that, it has to be on the table in the future. So I'll just make that point again. Okay, all good.
Lloyd.
Yeah, it was just clarification, Mr. Chairman, that we need to make sure that we don't get rating numbers caught up with capital expenditure, and after that capital expenditure has gone through, then possibly the rate values change because of the capital expenditure. So we would see a change in those numbers next time we see them, I would assume, because it's done on land value, which is going to be significantly different.
Because, you know, that is quite surprising, probably many of us, that we've got 600 more properties in Southland, but it's actually a positive. More rate paying properties we've got, the news where the diversion. So any further questions before I ask somebody to move items A, B and C?
I'll move A, B and C.
Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Neville. Is there discussion? Not, I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. Are you reporting a no or? That's
Yes or no?
okay, the motion is passed. We'll now move to item 2, which is the local government New Zealand Zone 5 and 6 meeting attendance. Conflicting, I think Jan has booked us for 2, but I'm pretty sure that Rob and I are unable to attend. I've had indications from Lyndall and Neville that they would be interested in attending.
I will volunteer to attend on our behalf, Chairman. We have to make a presentation on good practice, so at some stage.
I will just make you aware that there's supposed to be a workshop on the yield to the proposed South Auckland land plan on one of those days. There's 2 workshops scheduled, but one of them, the first one is on the first day of this meeting. Makes any difference.
So that's one of the reasons I feel I need to be here for that one. That was, so somebody likes to move that the 2. Lyndall and Neville will attend on their behalf, seconded by Lloyd. Any further discussion? I will put the mark. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
That's no carried. Neville suggested that before we may want to do a presentation on.
You only get about 3 minutes. Normally you would do that.
Right.
One of us will have to do it.
I'm happy to support Mr. Councillor Cook and his endeavours.
Very generous of you, Councillor Ludlow.
Thank you, I thought so.
Right, we'll now move to the supplementary item.
I'll stand behind it and do what I do.
Now, this has come about as a result of a meeting that Rob and I attended with the board. And there was a discussion around whether they should extend the number of trustees to include SCC and ourselves. Probably what they have to probably we felt that we would quite like to be involved, and the discussion was around that if we were invited, that we would try and find the person with the best score base. So it could be a councillor or it could be a staff member. I was conscious that Rob's on the biodiversity panel in Wellington, which could well be it. But at the moment, we're not making that decision. Well, we're just accepting the recommendation. You want to comment on it as well?
Yeah, well, just a couple of things from me, and then I'll ask Paul if he wants to add anything as well. Predator Free has given DOC $3 million to set up a Predator Free program on Rakiura, so this is part of that process. And part of that process is setting up a governance group. This will allow other funders, such as the philanthropics, to also invest in predator-free and other agencies who might want to come into it. So there's very much, there's some momentum around this, quite a bit of support, obviously, on Rekiroa. So an opportunity for us to be part of that board, and noting that our responsibilities, in particular around biosecurity, in terms of keeping pests away from the mainland to Rekiroa. So we've got specific responsibilities in that space, which would largely be our role, I understand, in this broader project. Paul, do you want to add anything to that? Paul?
Yeah, just thanks through the chair. The only bit that I would add, we were asked to review the deed, which in the bullet points within the report, we gave some feedback to the deed, which is highlighted in the report. And just to confirm what the CEO has said, that we'll come back to you on a later date with, if you're happy to proceed with the trust and being part of the trust, then we'll come back and work out how that is figured out.
I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but if Stewart Island achieves predator-free status, it would be the largest island in the world. So I've got Lyndall, then Eric.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering how the communications loop will work, and where that will feed into council committees. So I'm assuming if it's Paul's work, it's coming through
Regional.
services.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
Thank you. Just
Yeah, I think this is great. And I'm just wondering what the expectation of the Te Puka Rekiroa Trust is while putting someone on. Are they looking for input? Are they looking for resources? Just what is the expectation around inviting us to be on? I think we should be there, but I think I need some clarification about expectation.
I think we do, we put about 50,000 into that a year, I remember, but it's.
I think a contribution goes in, but I guess the key thing is that we've got expertise and experience in pest management and in biodiversity. So they're looking for that to be recognised as part of being part of the trust. And also, as I said before, a key role is around that biosecurity between the island and the mainland. So if it does, when it does become predator-free, I'm very positive. Technology now to do that, that would be something really important to make sure that any planes and ships going over there are free. So, there's a similar thing going on in between the Chatham Islands and the mainland, where there's a biosecurity protocol that's adhered to, whereas in terms of freight going on, there's a checking process, and there's some traps around where it lands on Chatham Island. I envisage, we haven't got this detail yet. It's something similar for Rekiroa. So that would be, I think, the key thing. Anything over and above that would be open to discussion and negotiation. But the key thing is keeping, once it is clear, how do we keep it clear? So we've got specific responsibilities there.
Neville.
So it's just the same question that Eric has, really, Chairman. We can go on there as observers and supporters, but do we take on any additional obligations, that's the term that I would use, as a result of being part of that group, rather than just being a contributor, financial contributor?
So any obligations would need to be discussed with the council. So this is, there's no, you're a board member, so therefore you can put $1 million. There's no discussions like that happening.
Didn't seem to be the motivation. The conversation was more about having a broad race. I've got Lloyd, then Eric.
I think, Mr. Chairman, we're all struggling with the same thing. To me, I would see this as a governance role to help the trust. Some of the things you're talking about is actually the actions on the ground. So I'm just not clear by the commentary that's been said. Are we talking about helping to lead the trust to achieve a work plan, and work will be done by others than the trust? Or are we talking about people with knowledge on there to actually basically, it's a different level. And I think that's where you would start to angle between staff and council, because what is it is actually needed at the trust, and how do you add value to the trust program?
So I think it's a really good point. I guess one of the things when they set up, when they do establish who should be on it, individuals, they'll need to do what are the skills they're looking for, and some of those skills are going to be governance skills. there's also going to have to be some skills, I'd imagine, around actually understanding the business of predator control. But not at a knowing how to set a trap, but knowing the business. So I think at a governance level, but also knowing the business around predator control, so actually you can provide some useful commentary. So both levels, but not the detail around operational detail.
Yeah, I don't want to be in there.
No, that's not the role of a board, as you know. I don't need to tell you that.
And I guess at the end of that meeting, I did say, look, let's put it out there flexible, in a flexible fashion so that we can provide the best skill base. So that's really why it's couched the way it is. And obviously we'll have another paper will come to us and we can make the decision.
If I could just follow on, Mr. Chairman, the reason I asked that question is like, it could be understanding the communication strategy. It could be understanding how you take people with you and actually gather data and present the data in a way that is meaningful to the community and they can actually see what's going on. And we've got some robust data sitting in there for people to look at. As you say, Rob, this could be the biggest island in the world that's predator free, quotation marks. So I think we need to understand what we're going into. And while it's given a level of direction here, my gut feeling is it's actually more than that. And this is where I think I support the project. I think we have to be there. There's no choice about that. But it's who we put up and what skill sets do they add value to within that criteria is I'm not sure if it's totally related here in the recommendation.
So the decision to Chair, the decisions around who should be on it would be the next stage. And this is really looking for sort of support to be part of the trust. And I guess it is an opportunity to be part of so predator free, as you know, is getting significant momentum across the country. This is a project that's at a reasonable stage in South, and it's an opportunity to be part of that project. Once there's a discussion around skill sets, we can come back to you and say it would be either at that, it could be both at that governance oversight or at a level of understanding the business around predator free, including the comms and engagement, which is a critical part of this as well. So that's the next stage is who should be on it. And certainly staff aren't assuming it's going to be staff. This needs to be the right skill sets. And I'd imagine that at least it would be both, one of each, but it could well be both councils. I wouldn't be saying it. It certainly wouldn't be my view, two staff. But again, that's next.
Is it for two or is it for one? I thought it was
only one.
It was one. Okay, I'm being ambitious. I'm saying let's take it over. But no.
Take a friend.
No, apologies. So look,
I've got Eric, then Peter.
Yeah, I was going to express an interest in the job, and I think certainly in terms of understanding the dynamics of Stewart Island, I was part of my patch as an MP. I put in place the visitor levy, and I'm still held in quite high regard in that matter. I've also had a long-term interest in the predator-free position on Stewart Island, and have been a bit concerned that the study by Brent Bevan, when he was funded by the Tyndall Foundation, has kind of fallen into non-activity, probably largely due to Gareth Morgan's jihad on domestic cats and what that raised on Stewart Island. But I also chaired some of the early meetings between the deer stalkers and the locals with possum control and TN80 on certain of it. So I am quite familiar with the dynamics of Stewart Island, and it is a passion of mine. So I was just going to express a bit of an interest if you were.
Oh, right. And that's a conversation for another day, but no, thanks for that. Peter.
Yeah, it's important to realise too that this is not in a conceptual phase, predator-free Rakiura. It's been going on for some time.
Yeah.
So we're discussing this one. There's a lot of work that's been done, and Rob's talking about quarantine. There has been talk in the past. I'm not really too sure how advanced they are with it, but talking as Bluff as a total quarantine area, Bluff Hill, for example. So there's been a lot of work going on there with trapping and trying to keep that predator free, not just point of departure. So
Thanks. Alan, then Lyndall.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just an understanding the current trustees or who else would be the trustees? So if there's going to be 5 trustees, SDC 1, ourselves 2, the other 3 trustees. And from an existing budget, have predominantly the funds come from DOC to fund Peter de Vries in the past? Is there any concern over the main funder wanting to lower their interest in funding Peter de Vries going forward? And so is it looking to try and put some of the funding back onto the locals to fund this project, hence SDC and ourselves being asked to be trustees?
Through your chair, the money's coming out of Predator Free, which is a separate budget that's comes initially, I think, from vote conservation, but it's Predator Free so it's a separate budget line item. And so they've got funding, some future funding allocation. This is also setting up a trust enables them to attract philanthropics, and there's some significant philanthropics that are interested and involved, and they're looking to invest, as I understand it, and really lift that fund. We haven't got the resources here in Southland to do what's required on Rekiura. So this is going to depend on the philanthropics coming to the party.
And the other 3 trustees?
I am not aware of who they are.
Well, I'm assuming is Paul Norris going to continue? There's got a number that are there at the moment.
There's some independents. So there's Paul Norris at the moment is chairing an interim group. I'd imagine he may well continue. I'm not sure. Those details haven't been shared. So it's it could well be the philanthropics may well end up being part of the board member. That's to be determined. Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given that lending our weight to helping people find other sources of income is a good thing, and that our work in the biodiversity and biosecurity space is essential, and we've invested in that a lot already. And given the fact that it's better to be inside the proverbial tent than outside it, I would like to move that recommendation.
Thank you, Linda. Seconded for that recommendation, Bonnie. Any further discussion?
I'll just point out that I've seen Peter de Vries initiatives succeed. Ulva Island codfish is one. Resolution Island or Anchor Island anyway, Kapiti Island, and areas that have been fenced off, Orokonui, for example, and you get this measurable increase in biodiversity. So it's a wonderful goal. The reality of a land mass the size of Rakiura is daunting, but not impossible, given the development of new techniques, genetic engineering, more clever traps and poisons and things like that. So it's an interesting project.
Further comment? The motion has been moved and seconded. I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. That will take us to the end of the public session this morning, I think. We off live streaming.
Oh, and so
The chair will give us the reasons for going into public exclusion.
So adopt the resolutions of the Southport Subcommittee meeting held on the 26th of August 2021, and that was to allow council to carry out commercial activities.
Would somebody like to move that we move into public excluded? Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Lloyd. All in favour will say aye. Aye.